I was one of the team of lawyers who represented 42 Bangladeshi men in their claim to the European Court of Human Rights against Greece. So the men work on strawberry farms in the Manolada region of Greece, and they had been promised by the farmer that they would be paid wages, but in the event the farmer didn't pay them their wages, but he insisted that they go on working, threatening that they wouldn't get paid their back pay if they stopped. And they were too scared to leave the area or look for other jobs because they didn't have residence permits to be in Greece. And the farmer knew that. So they brought a case that they had been subjected to forced labour by the farmer because he had essentially forced them to work for him, even without pay, by threatening not to pay them when he knew they were too scared to leave the farm. So that's why it came to the public attention, because the workers went on strike 3 times, and when the 3rd time they went on strike, the employer brought in another gang of workers to pick the strawberries. So when those workers went to speak to the new workers about this, the employer's guards, the employer's thugs, fired at the workers with guns, injuring 35 people. And I met the men, my clients, who still have little bits of shot in their fingers or in their skulls. And that caused an outrage in Greece, so across the whole political spectrum. So what happened was that after the shooting, the police investigated and they charged the farmer and the guards with serious bodily harm. But the Greek lawyers who were helping the workers at the Greek Council for Refugees also argued that they'd actually been victims of forced labour and that therefore this was a case of trafficking. So the Greek prosecutors agreed to charge the farmers with trafficking. When it came to the court, though, the court decided that they were guilty of the serious bodily harm offence, but the court found that they had not been subjected to forced labour, because in the eyes of the Greek court, because they were free to physically walk off the farm down to the centre of the village, they weren't victims of forced labour. In the minds of the Greek court, you had to be held on the farm. You had to be denied your free movement to be victims. And that process took about 18 months of the trial. And then when it was over, the workers, or some of the workers, the 42 workers, took their case to the European Court of Human Rights and argued that the Greek court had got the law wrong. And the European Court of Human Rights, in March of this year, agreed with the workers. So the whole case took 4 years from when the shooting happened until when the court gave its judgment in March. So Morse Chowdury, who is one of the claimants, and the case was brought, he's the first person who happens to be named. Morse took part in the press conference about the judgment and was interviewed by journalists from all over the world talking about the case. And he and many of the other workers, I think, now have a much clearer understanding about what their legal rights are. But more importantly than that, they have the permits that give them the confidence to move around and engage with the authorities. And what we want to do is to help the other Bangladeshi men there to be able to present their cases to the authorities without having the fear of being deported, and to be able to argue about being paid the wages if they find themselves with unpaid wages, argue about the conditions they're working under, and try and ensure that Greek law is upheld in Greece. So I think it's been a way of drawing a lot of attention to the fact that these men actually have legal rights. So I think that what the case teaches us is that if you are pushed outside the protection of the law, that you don't have meaningful access to justice on any of the things that matter for you. And that is the most serious situation that any person can be put in. And it's one that irregular migrants are often put in by the way that governments behave. So the case isn't about saying that these men have that everyone's right. So the case doesn't say that the men have a right to stay in Greece, but what it says is that the government has to take action to protect people from labour exploitation, and we think that that means that they have to give the workers that Greece needs the right to live in Greece, because without that they're outside the protection of the law. I think the second, another piece of access to justice is that to have access to justice, people have to know what their rights are. And if you're excluded from society, you're not going to have information about your rights. And so what we hope that the case will do is give migrant workers in Greece the confidence to find out more about their rights, to assert their rights, and to demand their rights from the government or from the courts or wherever it is that they have to go.